One. Hi, this is WAKR's Ray Horner, and welcome to our Talking Tribe special with Tribe broadcaster Jim Rosenhaus and VP of the Cleveland Indians, Bobby DiBiasio. We welcome all of those in attendance and listening and viewing to this Real Talking Tribe special. I'm Ray Horner, morning host at WAKR and the program director, and of course, WAKR is your home for Tribe baseball. And by the way, if you'd like to be part of WAKR's Cleveland Indians broadcast, you can call Dom Rizzo at 330-869-9800. So with that being said, let's talk a little Tribe right now. And first of all, let's bring in broadcaster Jim Rosenhaus. Rosie, go ahead. Update us on where the Tribe is and Major League Baseball.
Well, thanks, Ray, and thanks so much for putting this together. I know we usually come down and have a great time at Canal Park, but for obvious reasons, it just doesn't make sense today. But thanks so much for putting this together, and we're hopeful that with the news earlier this week that everything will start, if not right on time, real close to it, and that means a game on February 27th, and in terms of spring training, and then opening day on April 1st, because it looks like that's what the players and MLB have come to the conclusion on, that they'll play the regular season as scheduled, 162 starting April 1st, and spring training starting in a couple of weeks with games beginning on February the 27th out in Goodyear. So that's awesome news. Just a little look back at last year, and it wasn't too much after this time a year ago that everything shut down and everything changed. For us, we were just about through spring training. There were only, I think, about 10 days left when the NBA ended up shutting down, and a day later, MLB did the same thing. It was kind of odd because we're out in Goodyear, and it never rains in spring training. I'm going to say in the time the Indians have been there, you can count the rainouts on one hand over the 10, 11 years that the team's been out there. But we actually were rained out 2 days in a row, and the day they shut it down was a rain out as well. And then with everything going on in the world, they just said, hey, everyone try and get back home as quick as you can. But I thought the Indians did a great job, the players individually staying in some semblance of close to game shape. So when they returned in July, they were ready to go. And the team, the franchise, did a great job of putting protocols in place. And Major League Baseball had a certain amount, but I think the Indians did some things on their own that really helped contribute to getting through with no positive tests once the season began. So that was a big key. And they played well. Pitching was great. Offense was a struggle at times, but they made the postseason again, albeit a brief stay in the postseason. But I think all in all, a great year, especially so for Shane Bieber, another in what's become a tradition of great pitchers now who've won Cy Young awards. He joins that crew, CC Sabathia, Cliff Lee, and Corey Kluber, and now you add Shane Bieber to that list of recent vintage Cy Young Award winners. He was just unhittable most of the season. And Jose Ramirez had a great year, ended up finishing in the top 3 in MVP voting. So some real good things to take away from a year ago. I'm going to save a lot of what we do for questions. If you have questions about how we did games last year when the team was on the road and we were not with them, myself and Tom, we can save that for the question part. And as I told Bobby in one of these last week, we'll save the tough questions for him. And if he wants to address, obviously, name change, some big trades in the offseason as we head into this year, he can do that as well. But looking forward to the season, it'll be a different team, no question. There have been some moves in the offseason. Other teams in the division look like they've certainly taken a step forward. When you look at the White Sox and the Twins look to be really good again. The other two are improved, but I don't think you can ever count out a Terry Francona-led team. No matter what happens in the offseason, it just seems like he has his team really well prepared to play. And that's another big key. It looks like Tito will be back and healthy, ready to go. So that's just kind of a real quick capsule on last year, what's to come. And Ray, I know you want to get to Bobby D, and he'll get kind of into the weeds a little bit on some other stuff too.
All right, thanks, Rosie. And you know, one thing, in talking to Rosie during the course of last year and Tom Hamilton, I think all of us would agree. I thought I was on the road. you guys did a great job in broadcasting those games, which added another layer, Rosie, to your broadcast. I mean, you guys were talking about weather in those cities, traffic. I mean, you guys did a great job of making us feel like we were in Minnesota and we were in some of those places.
Well, we were fortunate. We had a couple of keys. They sent you a lot of the ballpark sounds just down the line, so we were able to plug that into our broadcast. But the PR department was tremendous. Bart Swain was on most of the trips, and then Corporate trip to the others, and they were tremendous as far as just constantly with text messages and any other way to get a hold of us to let us know what was going on. So we would know if a storm was coming in Chicago and a rain delay was imminent and things like that. So really tip of the cap to them. And I'm sure we missed some stuff along the way, absolutely, but hopefully it sounded as pretty much close to normal as a normal broadcast would.
For sure, Jim. It was top shelf with you and Hammy doing the play-by-play last year. Okay, let's talk a little nuts and bolts with baseball. And Bobby and I got together. It's been about 6 weeks ago. And one of the first things Bobby said to me is this was one of the most difficult baseball years he could ever remember. So with that being said, let's bring in the VP with the Cleveland Indians, Bobby DiBiasio, to our show. Bobby?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Ray. And Mr. Fander, good to see you, comrade in arms there. Hoping we can get to do what we do best, and that's entertain fans and put a good product on the field. And what we missed all last year was that interaction with passionate fans and being up close and personal with our players. And obviously a very, very difficult time, but you learn how to be versatile and flexible. And I have to give a tip of the cap to Rosie, Hammy, to all the operational people at the Cleveland Indians, the guys at STO, getting through 60-game schedule was really an undertaking. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but and why there were no fans in the stands when down the street you saw people in a football stadium, but you couldn't have them in a baseball ballpark. There are reasons for that. Rosie, when you said that this was about a year ago, it made me go right back to our conversation in March. You and I and Matt Underwood, I think Hammy and Bart, we're all sitting there on March 12th, I think it was, when we were wondering if our game in spring training was going to have a 1:00 start because it was raining, or if we were going to push it back to 3:00. This was a Thursday. On Tuesday, we had an off day. On Wednesday, we had a rain out. To have 3 straight days of nothing happening that just is unprecedented in spring training, that you would have 3 days with nothing happening. So they really wanted, Shane Bieber was supposed to pitch, and so they wanted him on his regular rotation. And we're all talking about, I wonder if we're going to push, because the weather report looks like we may push this game to 3:00. And as we're all talking about that, I don't know if it was Mike Chernoff or Chris Antonetti, somebody from Baseball Ops walks into the press dining room and said, "Hey, spring training's over. We're all going home." We're like, what? We went from discussing whether or not there was going to be a ball game at 3:00 to we're done. And so we all got on planes the next day and flew home, and obviously lived through what we lived through. But to get through that was an incredible show of cooperation and discipline by so many people that you have to tip your cap to everybody involved in the game of baseball to get it done. We're pretty excited again about this coming season. I know we lost our best player, but baseball isn't built on one guy, and we have the best manager in baseball. So it's going to be interesting to see how Tito embraces this new young ball club that he's going to have, a young, hungry, talented group of players that have tremendous versatility. How he's going to maneuver them around the field and in the batting order, how we're going to have to deal with some teaching at the big league level with a few guys, which normally we haven't had that scenario the last few years, but there'll be a few more youngsters that are going to have to learn the ropes at the big league level. But in a 24-hour span last week, we became a much, much better baseball team. And we all believe put us right back into contention, as Rosie indicated, a 3-team race as it was last year. With the signing of Cesar Hernandez, terrific leadoff hitter, hit over 280, won a Gold Glove, led the league in doubles last year with 20, and then adding Eddie Rosario. You know, there's an outfield position now, left field, home run guy, RBI guy, that we just all of a sudden left field is taken care of. We all talked about where we're going to find offense from the outfield. Well, one of those positions is firm now. And it's going to be interesting to see through spring training how Tito and his coaches determine what the other 2 spots are. Are we going to have a platoon like Jordan Luplow and Daniel Johnson in right field? Which, Rosie, you can chime in on this. Franmil Reyes and Jordan Luplow in spring training last year, spring training 1, were on fire. Those guys looked like they were ready to make their mark big time in the big league level. And then everything got shut down. Luplow had an injury, never really recovered. Some guys had difficulty coming back to spring training too, playing with no fans in the stands, etc. And so that was a bummer for us because those 2 are key guys to how we generate offense. Who's going to play center field? Oscar Mercado may get the first shot. It'll be interesting to see what happens, where Josh Naylor fits in with Bobby Bradley and Jake Bowers and Josh Naylor, who could all play first base. Who's going to be our first baseman? While that's a question mark, there's also some excitement there that you give a youngster an opportunity to prove their value at the big league level. Is Bobby Bradley or Jake Bowers ready to be a big leaguer? You never know until you play them. And so it's going to be interesting, very important spring training for these young men as they try to make their mark at the big leagues. We'll be built on pitching, of course, as we always are. We have an interesting back end of the bullpen. My 2 keys, I don't know if you agree, Rosie, you can chime in here on this one, but Franmil Reyes and Emmanuel Clase, to me, are the 2 keys if you can break it down to 2 guys that need to add something large to who we are. We need Franmil to be more consistent in the number 5 or number 4 hole, a big, strong power hitter. You all know who he is, what he can do with a baseball. He just needs to be more consistent for us in that role and drive in some big runs and hit some homers. Class A is a guy we got in exchange for Corey Kluber and Delino DeShields from Texas. Throws 100 miles an hour out of the bullpen, was on suspension with PEDs, but he's been healthy and doing his thing. I don't know if he's in Goodyear yet, but I know he worked hard in the Dominican all winter long. Adding him to James Karinchak in the back end of the bullpen with Nick Whitgren and some of the younger strong arms that we have, we think our pitching from top to bottom is going to be the best in our division. So add one little stat for the old timers on here. Shane Bieber won the pitching Triple Crown this past year. most wins, most strikeouts, lowest ERA. Last time an Indians starter did that was 1940, I think. Bob Feller in 1940. So pretty good company there. That does it. Pitching Triple Crown, unanimous selection as Cy Young. Doesn't come around very often. So we got a stud at the top of the rotation. And so pitching is going to be our strength. One thing, we were 35-25 in a 60-game schedule. That's a 583 winning percentage. 583 winning percentage gets you about 94 wins. So if you extrapolate out, we're a 90-win season last year, 90-plus wins again, which would have been our 5th straight 90-plus win season. You got to go back in the record books to find a period of time in Indians history, which this coming season will be our 121st season as a charter member of the American League. So in our long history, how many times have we won 90 or more games 5 years in a row? You may think quickly off the top of your head, well, those 90s teams had to do that. They were pretty damn good, but they didn't. It was the 50s guys, 1950 to 1955, 6 straight years that group with Feller and Lemon and Wynn and Garcia and Doby and Rosen and all of the Boudreaux and all of those Hall of Famers, they won 90-plus games 6 years in a row, which is the most in franchise history. So what this team is doing right now is pretty remarkable. We just haven't crossed the finish line, which makes it so frustrating. We've talked before, the 3 things that matter in our business that we look at every season. We go through the emotion of elation, we go through the emotion of frustration, and we go through the emotion of discovery. And the biggest frustration is getting bounced early last year in the postseason and not crossing the finish line. But that doesn't mean we haven't been there and had a chance to do it consistently, repeatedly, because of the sustained winning culture that Chris Antonetti, Mike Chernoff, and Tito have created for this franchise. So we feel good going in. I'm sure our guys will tinker a little bit more. But as we always talk about when we meet at the ballpark each February, the team that breaks camp to open up this year, April 1 at Detroit, is going to be a little bit different than the team that plays in October. Understand the way our guys have gone through navigating and constructing a ball club that to make baseball in October possible, how we go about doing that, maneuvering the chess pieces, as you will, to get to October baseball. So lots happens in those 6 months, and especially with our guys who have been active during the trading deadline every year. But we sit here feeling pretty good about how we're constructing a baseball team. Every season, off season brings different challenges, some new faces that we have to learn and appreciate. We now know Cesar Hernandez. When we signed him last year as a free agent, that was one of the most ho-hum signings. People didn't know him. He played 6 years in Philadelphia as their starting second baseman, but people didn't really react to it. And then all of a sudden he starts playing for us, and he could have been our best player last year overall, him and Jose. So to have him back, I mean, here's a guy who signed back with us because he loved who we are as an organization. He had options out there, and he chose to come back to be a Cleveland Indian because he loves what we're all about, how we treat our players and the resources we provide. And that's always a wonderful thing to hear from a veteran baseball player. So with that, Ray, we can maybe open it up. and
Yeah,
just get a dialogue going, see what people want to talk about.
Yeah, that sounds good. And again, hit the chat button and type in your questions for Rosie or Bobby. They're happy to answer them. As a matter of fact, have some right away for you guys. And Rosie, I think this one is for you from Chuck. It says, will you guys be traveling with the team this year for your broadcast? You touched on that briefly, that last year, and how you were able to make that work. Any word on this season?
Initially, regular season, no. Just because I think until there's a vaccine, and we're much further down the road COVID wise, Tom and I are not in that same tier as the players. So we can't travel on the team plane or stay at their hotels and really have any contact with them outside of what we're doing right here, a Zoom call, just to keep them protected and out of harm's way, just down the odd chance that either Tom or I were to have COVID. So no at the start, but with the one, I think, date that everyone kind of looks at is the All-Star break. Maybe it'll change by mid-July and we'll have a chance to do that. So at least to start the regular season, no travel. We may zip over to Detroit for the opener and do that in person. We are going to spring training, so we'll have an opportunity to do games there. But that's very similar to what we do here for the home games. We'll be in that same situation out in spring training, but we'll have no access to the complex where the players do their drills, and that's where we usually have interaction with them. So it will be a lot different this spring, and it'll be different from what we're used to start the regular season, but similar to what we were doing last year once we got going.
Again, we're talking Tribe with Jim Rosenhaus, Bobby DiBiasio with the Cleveland Indians. And I don't know who wants to jump in here on this one. Chuck also says, hey, of the two infielders that we acquired from the Mets, Jimenez and Rosario, who has the best chance to be our starting shortstop?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting one. You can answer this one too, Rosie. Rosario, Ahmed Rosario, obviously is the more veteran guy. He moved over to second base when the Mets decided to give Jimenez an opportunity to make his major league debut. At 20, I think Jimenez made his major league debut last year for the Mets. Both are a teeny bit different. Jimenez is supposed to be an incredibly sick and slick defender, just phenomenal defender, where Ahmed Rosario is a little bit better hitter, where his strength lies. Not that he can't field the position, he certainly can, but his strength is a little bit more offensive, where Jimenez right now at 20 is a premier defensive shortstop. And obviously as a youngster would learn how to get the bat rolling in the big leagues, as most young players, have to learn how to hit big league pitching on an everyday basis. Your thoughts on that, Rosie?
And I think before Hernandez re-signed, you could have seen them as being the double play combo, and they would figure out who would play short, who would play second. It's going to be interesting because obviously, I think the way the Indians are constructed, where pitching really rules what they do, they value good defense. And Tito addressed it when he talked about the trade. He said, look, we don't want to have preconceived notions going into spring training. So I think they're going to use that month and a half almost of spring training to really get a good read and a comfort level with who's most reliable at short, and balance that with who might be better offensively, and take the best combo they can. But it may take most of spring training before they really have a good feel. And I think they want to see these guys play. They don't want to just go off of scouting reports or maybe what they've heard from the Mets. They want to see these guys play and then make a decision. And what they start with opening day, that could change over the course of the season too. So I think it's really up in the air, and it'll be an interesting position battle to watch during spring training.
Bobby, how about you taking right now, because with the video that we're receiving some unique pictures They're behind you, my friend. I
Oh,
see the
yeah,
team hustling off the field, and then it looks like a DiMaggio Feller picture there. Talk
yeah.
about those two collectibles.
I will, but I do need to add, as Rosie said, we're built on pitching, and when you have pitching, you need to have incredible defense, um, especially when you struggle to score runs a little bit, that you haven't got the kind of offense that you might have in other seasons, that pitching and defense. This was the first year that Rawlings came out with a team Gold Glove. Every individual player, Roberto Perez won his second straight Gold Glove. Cesar Hernandez was the Gold Glove second baseman, but they also came up with a team Gold Glove, and the Indians won that in the American League. That we were ranked the #1 defensive team in the American League. So, as Rosie said, that's the philosophy, that we pitch it and we catch it. We play good fundamental baseball. That's what Tito's known for. This team's going to be interesting with its little bit of power, a little bit of speed, versatility all around the diamond. I'm anxious to see how, Tito molds this team. It'll be a little bit different of a team for him to have to manage, and I think he's really excited about it. He's healthy. This picture over here, it's not the team running off the field of sorts. It's the 100th anniversary team. This picture is July 21, 2001, when we celebrated our 100th anniversary as a charter member of the American League. And they had about 41, 42 players, part of that top 100 roster, who came back to the ballpark for a big weekend celebration. And this was right before the game. We took a team photo right beyond second base. And I'll tell you a quick story, that Charlie Nagy was pitching that day. And he was part of the top 100 Indians roster, as he should be. He's in the Cleveland Indians Hall of Fame. So I told him I was not going to allow him to miss being in that top 100 team photo, that I didn't want him. Those of you remember in elementary school, if you didn't show up on the day you did your homeroom picture, there was a little thumbnail in the corner that they put your headshot. I didn't want Charlie to be that guy. I didn't want any of those little headshots on that photo. And Charlie was the kind of guy, Rosie can attest to this, that you could talk to on game day, on the day that he pitched. There's some pitchers who put blinders on, and you go near them, they bite your head off, and you knew not to go near them because they're getting ready to perform. Or Charlie, you could go up to him at any time and say hello and chit chat, and he'd go out and do his thing. So before he goes out to the bullpen, I said, look, we're having this picture taken. I am not allowing you to miss this. You're going to hate me when your career's over, and I don't want you to hate me. So I'm going to wait for this picture to be taken. So when you're done in the bullpen, I'll have a step ladder beyond. There's a 4-row riser. I said, I'm going to have a step ladder there. I'll put a bat boy back there. He'll take your dugout jacket. You step on the ladder, get into position, back row, middle, take the picture, done. You can go get ready to pitch. You cool with that? And he goes, yeah, I really appreciate that. So, of course, guys are getting antsy, and they're going, what are we waiting for? What's this team picture doing? I said, we're waiting for Chuck Nagy, man. He's pitching today, and he's walking in from the bullpen. I cannot have this picture taken without him. And all the hitters, Buddy Bell, all these guys are like, screw them, the hell with pitchers. And all the pitchers are yelling at the hitters. So now they're chapping at each other. So now Chuck gets up on the top row. I said, okay, Chuck's here. We're ready to go. Let's take the picture. And we take the picture. Chuck gets off. Now all of a sudden, Louis Tiant, Bob Feller, Mel Harder, Sam McDowell, Jim Perry, all these great Cleveland, Sonny Siebert, all these great Indians pitchers go over to hug Charlie Nagy, to introduce themselves to him and say, hey, we're really looking forward to seeing you pitch today. So when all that's done and you see everybody walking off the field, and pardon my 4-letter language here, but Charlie turns to me and he goes, I better not shit the bed today in front of these guys. Which I thought was just one of the great. I said, and he pitched 7 innings of great ball, if I remember correctly. But it was funny. He goes, oh, now I'm nervous.
The greatest of all time.
Yeah. So that's that. The other one was a gift from Bob Feller. This is Bob Feller and Joe DiMaggio standing in front of the dugout in League Park, 1937, 38, autographed by both gentlemen. Mr. Feller gave that to me as a birthday present one year, which I felt honored. Actually, we were in his museum and he had it. Typical Bob, he just took it off the wall of the museum. He goes, here, you deserve this more than it hanging here in the museum, which unfortunately is no longer, which is why we have the exhibit to Bob Feller and the Terrace Club at Progressive Field.
All
But
right.
Rosie, you're 2 guys. I wanted to, I did a manual Class A to help the back end of our bullpen and Fran Meal. What's your
That ship
thought?
has sailed, Bobby. That was 10 minutes ago.
What's your thought, Rosie? What's
You know
your
what?
thought?
I'm gonna go 2 keys. Karinchak. I mean, we're assuming he's going to be the closer, and he was great last year for so much of the season. But as we know, sometimes, I mean, who had better stuff? I would say Karinchak's raw stuff was probably better than Brad Hand's, but you trusted Brad Hand in that 9th inning, and he had a wonderful year. Sometimes experience matters, and how do you handle blowing a save and coming back the next time out? So we'll have to see all that from Karinchak. He certainly has the arm to do it, and I think he showed last year he has the demeanor to do it. But until you see him in that role on a day-in, day-out basis, I'm sure there's a little apprehension there. And Oscar Mercado in center field, it'd be tremendous for the Indians if they could just pencil him in and have him be the Mercado from 2 years ago when he really burst on the scene and had a nice rookie season. He struggled mightily from the get-go last year, ended up shifting to the alternate site for a while and just never got going. But I think we saw 2 years ago, good defender, hits for average, hits for some power, can steal a base. If he can be that Oscar Mercado, there's another piece to that outfield puzzle that would be really good. So those are my
Rosie, let's stay with you. We have a couple of questions here pertaining to players. Again, one says, who is the primary that you see the backup for Roberto Perez in the catching position? And another one says, will we see Nolan Jones this year?
First question, Austin Hedges, who came over in the Mike Clevenger deal from the Padres. He'll be the backup to Roberto Perez. What was the second question, Ray?
It was Nolan Jones. Will we see Nolan Jones this year?
I think we will at some point. They've been using him in the outfield. This past fall, they had him transition to the outfield. He's normally a third baseman, but obviously the Indians have Jose Ramirez there. Look, over the course of a long season, and we're hoping it is a long season this year, much more back to normal with 162. I think at some point in time, you will see him in the major leagues. Supposedly he made great progress last year. It's so hard to know because there was no minor league season, but they really liked what he did at the alternate site and in the inter squad games. Let him get off to a good start at whatever level they start him at. You would think it'd be AAA, and maybe he's one of those guys that they call up when he's hot, reaches the big leagues and is a real nice boost. But I think at some point in time, there'll be a need for him, and he'll beat that door down to get here and be a part of it.
All right, Bobby, we have a couple of questions here for you. I know your relationship with Tito. Mike wants to know, how healthy is Tito right now?
Well, he looks good. We've had conversations with him. He's been on a number of Zoom calls with our season ticket holders and corporate partners and internally with some of our staff. And he looks good. I've texted with him. He did take a trip to Hawaii to play golf about a month or two ago with his a good friend, Eddie Leone. Some of the old timers on this call will remember Eddie Leone as a former infielder with the Cleveland Indians. Eddie's a big real estate developer in Tucson, where Tito lives in the off season. He's lived there ever since, he graduated from the University of Arizona as one of their greatest collegiate players in that storied college program's history. I think he's got the only retired uniform number at the University of Arizona when he was MVP of the College World Series and #1 draft pick of the Montreal Expos. So he's got sun on his body. He's been able to get out. He's had a personal trainer for the first time in his life. Said he's dropped some pounds. So I think he's doing well and excited. The one thing we all know about Tito is his honesty. And he has said from the get-go, if he felt that he wasn't healthy enough to do what his job calls for him to do, to be the leader of this baseball team, and all the energy and hours and effort it takes to be that person, he wouldn't do it. And so he says that he's ready to do it and he feels good. And so we believe him, and we're blessed. Again, think about it. Since 2013, when he joined us, we've had 8 straight winning seasons. We've been in the postseason 4 out of the last 5 years, 5 times in the last 8 years. We're on this set of 90 plus wins. You can point to his arrival in the Cleveland Indians organization as a major reason why.
You're talking Tribe today with Bobby DiBiasio, VP with the Cleveland Indians, Tribe broadcaster Jim Rosenhaus. Bobby, again for you, one of our viewers had the question of player development is such a key for the Cleveland Indians, and with the pandemic, how big of a blow was that to baseball teams in general, but specifically the Indians, to not have the minor leagues last year?
Yeah, the whole minor league scenario that has played out over the last couple years, it's heartbreaking for guys like myself who've been around for 40 plus years, who understand the impact and importance of minor league baseball, and our hearts broke for the young players who weren't invited to our satellite camp in Eastlake, that they didn't have a baseball season, and so their development wasn't on track, and we weren't able to get our hands on them and do all the things that we do for these young players. We truly go after the holistic approach of creating a better man and a better player. All aspects of their well-being, from their mental aspect, their performance coaches, sleep coaches, nutritionists, strength and conditioning, hitting, pitching coaches, trainers, all the things, using analytics and in science to allow them to be the best they can be. And a lot of guys missed out on that. And that was troublesome and heartbreaking in a sense. And we hope that when all this pandemic is behind us, we can get back to that sense of normalcy, where guys are playing for us and in Columbus and in Akron and in Eastlake and in Lynchburg and in Arizona and in the Dominican. We value the diamond in the rough philosophy that we can find young players blossom despite the fact they weren't the #1 or #2 draft pick, that there's still athletes out there that can transform themselves into impactful big leaguers. So yeah, that was tough on all of us.
Rosie, this one's for you. Mason wants to know the biggest obstacle broadcasting the games last year when you had to do the games remotely.
Boy, there were a bunch, but actually, surprisingly, I thought what we could see was not too bad. Probably the hardest part was just pop-ups. I mean, our view was very similar to what you would see watching the game on television. So that center field camera, how often, you're watching the game and a guy takes a swing and the ball leaves the bat and you're just not sure where it's going. So that was something that was a challenge to overcome. And also if there's a guy at first and the hitter drives one up the alley in right center, when you're at the game and it's happening in front of you, you can kind of out of the corner of your eye see where the base runner's going, if they're going to send them or not, or hold them up while you're keeping an eye on whether the outfielder's getting the ball. You're at the mercy of whether TV, what they're showing. So that could be a challenge at times. But really the rest of it, I mean, they gave us, shots of the bullpens and the scoreboard and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't too bad. I think maybe the trickiest part was just when you're at the game and you're at the ballpark and there's fans there, your energy level is good because you're kind of competing with the crowd noise and that type of thing. I mean, we're in a room at a ballpark that's empty except for 2 security guys. It was me and Tom and 2 security guys. So you really have to kind of kick yourself to make sure that you're as energetic as you normally would be. So what we would do, we would just pump more crowd noise into our headphones to kind of have us, give us that little extra boost to compete with. So it was a challenge, but maybe it wasn't quite as challenging as I thought it would be, which is not to say we didn't miss stuff left and right. We probably did, but hopefully it sounded fairly normal.
All right, guys, we have a couple of minutes left. Rosie, why don't I start with you, and then we'll go to Bobby and kind of wrap up things, talking Tribe today. You guys, I know you got me excited for Tribe baseball. Talk about some final thoughts, Rosie.
Just, excited that things seem normal in terms of the schedule. I don't know about the folks on this call, but a 60-game baseball season, that just doesn't seem right. And we did it. I get it last year. It's how it had to be. And they got through and they had a World Series champion. But baseball is meant to be played over the course of 5 months where you have the ebbs and flows. You can have a slump for 2 months, but if you're an established player, you're going to end up pretty much where your baseball card says you should be. And so I'm excited to get back to 162 and have that sense of normalcy. And hopefully we get back to fans in the ballpark and everything that goes with that.
Bobby, how about wrapping it up for us?
Well, in the same sense that Rosie indicated, the excitement, well, there was always an excitement when a new season is starting, and this one's no different. As I mentioned at the outset, this sustained winning culture that has been created by Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff, Carter Hawkins, all the people in our baseball operations department led, and also with Tito and his coaching staff, gives us confidence that we're going to be right in the midst. As we said a year ago, this was going to be a 3-team race, us, the Twins, and the White Sox. You know how that race finished last year? We were all 1 game apart. The Twins won 36 games, and us and the Twins won 35, or however it came out. But we were 1 game apart from one another. And so I look to see the same thing. And while many people would want us to just sleepwalk through a divisional title, I think the fact that this is going to be a 3-team race really puts an exclamation point to every time. We play each team 18, 19 times. Every one of those games is going to mean so much. And so I think there's that excitement that's building for this coming baseball season, because our strengths are pitching and defense, which are better than the White Sox and the Twins. They have a better offense than we do. And how are we going to go about making sure we're 1 run better than those 2 guys when we play them face to face? And it should be real fun, and can't wait to listen to Hammy and Rosie do their thing.
Talking Tribe today, our thanks to VP with the Indians, Bobby DiBiasio, Tribe broadcaster Jim Rosenhaus. Oh, by the way, both of these guys, Bobby and Rosie, will be joining me on a weekly basis during the Major League Baseball season, part of the Ray Horner Morning Show here on WAKR. And thank you very much for their time, guys. They make time for us today and throughout the baseball season. If you'd like to be part of Tribe Baseball on WAKR, call Dom Rizzo at 330-869-9800. Bobby, Rosie, thank you so much. I know I'm ready to go for spring training. Thanks, guys, for being part of the program today.
Thanks, Ray. Good to see
Thank you.
everybody.